We are nearing the end of day 2 of Noosa Mining Virtual. This is the second last presentation of the day, and we will of course be ending on a high note. David Christensen, Managing Director of Renascor Resources, will be presenting. Renascor Resources is an Adelaide-based graphite explorer. Would love to hear more about that. Over to you, David.
Okay, thanks very much, Amy. Renascor Resources is developing a vertically integrated graphite mine and processing operation in South Australia to produce battery anode material for the lithium-ion battery market. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to leverage off of what looks like a very good asset, a very unique asset, a graphite asset here in South Australia, and move one step further downstream and produce the next step material, purified spherical graphite. We think this is a particularly good market for us, really for two reasons. One is on the demand side, graphite is finally transitioning from an industrial mineral into a battery mineral. And the purified spherical graphite space is where we think the high value is located. The next issue is our deposit itself on the supply side. We think we're pretty unique in being able to move one step further downstream and to be able to compete competitively with any operation in the world. So I'll talk to you today, largely about those two issues, the demand and the supply side. Quick overview, first the usual disclaimer. So really what we want to do is we want to take advantage of some of the transitioning that's happening with battery minerals in general because of electric vehicle growth. And this is really starting to become a paradigm shifting event, but it's only starting to impact graphite. And the strongest impact is on purified spherical graphite. And we think, again, we're particularly well positioned to take advantage of it for two reasons: because of our location in Australia and because of the fact that we have a resource that looks like it can compete and produce that first scale product, graphite concentrate, at amongst the lowest cost of any graphite development globally. And importantly, we think we can then move one step further, produce a downstream product, purified spherical graphite, and pass along that cost advantage from graphite concentrates into the downstream material, purified spherical graphite. And then I guess the final issue is this aligns us with off-takers. So we completed a definitive feasibility study on graphite concentrates last year. And as we had more serious discussions with potential off-take partners, what we found is they were looking for not just graphite concentrates, they were looking for purified spherical graphite. And that's largely because the only place they can get that now is China. China controls 100% of the market. We think we can compete in this market, and we think we can do it competitively. Now the graphite market. So what's really driving this is EV growth. And I guess the important thing is we're at the start of what looks like a mega trend, but we're just at the start of it. So these numbers are starting to bear out in terms of EV sales of total cars. And if we move one step upstream, for every new EV, you need more lithium-ion batteries. And so we can look at projected lithium-ion battery growth that's largely coming out of EV growth. And we're just at the start of what looks like a very important, again, paradigm shifting event. This is the space we want to operate in. Graphite fits in quite well. Graphite, again, is becoming a battery mineral. Graphite's needed in the negative electrode, the anode. And if we look a little bit more closely at graphite, again, graphite is currently, it's not yet a battery mineral, but it's becoming one. And if we start to look at some of the figures that are out, 2018, graphite demand, you can see here on the image on the far left, represented about a quarter of all demand for graphite was battery minerals. So about 25% in 2018, but if we project out by 2023, battery demand increases to about 50% of the market. And if we push a step further to 2028, battery takes up about 3/4 of the market. So annualized growth of up to 19% per year. But the bigger story here is what's happening on raw numbers. So the 3 years from now, we're looking at an increase of about 5 times to what we had in 2018. If we push to 2028, we're looking at over 2 million tons of potential new demand. Largely that's related to battery. Now, what we really want to do is we want to move one step further downstream, and we really want to capture some of that EV growth. And again, we think the best place to do that is by moving into purified spherical graphite. Here, purified spherical graphite is used exclusively in lithium-ion battery applications. And here we're looking at potential growth of up to 29% per year. At this rate, by the end of the decade, you would need 90 new severe-sized projects. This is our project. You need 90 new ones. So it's really major growth. We think this is a good area to be in, a big high growth area. And this isn't just forecasted growth. This growth is really coming out in the numbers already. If we look at actual PSG demand on the left part of the chart here, between 2015 and 2019, PSG demand has increased by 2.5 times. So this is a high growth area. This is the kind of market we want to be in. This looks to us like the opportunity market in the graphite space. Now, how are we going to get there? Well, we recently completed a battery anode study that picked up on a definitive feasibility we finished at the end of last year and looked at producing that downstream product. So if we take a step back and we look a little bit more closely at the graphite supply chain, we've tried to illustrate it here. So we start with a graphite mining operation, which is really a two-step operation: mining ore from an open pit mine, and then producing a graphite concentrate through a flotation processing circuit. That graphite concentrate then is generally sent on to a purified spherical graphite operation, which upgrades it through a two-step operation, a milling operation and a purification operation to produce what we're calling PSG. PSG is then sold to anode makers. Anode makers sell to lithium-ion battery makers, and it all goes into an electric vehicle. Now, let's focus on the middle of the supply chain, because this is where we see a real opportunity. The Chinese control 100% of the downstream capacity for producing purified spherical graphite. So all the natural flake graphite that goes into lithium-ion batteries has to pass through China. And this is the opportunity. Now, we can look a little bit more closely at the supply chain logistics here. So what China has done is China has vertically integrated operations where they have mining, production of graphite concentrates, and then upgrading that into purified spherical graphite. They produce their own graphite concentrates, and in recent years they've been importing largely from East Africa and largely to produce more purified spherical graphite, both for their own domestic consumption, anode makers, and then selling it to South Korea and Japan, again to anode makers, and then prospectively to emerging anode makers in Europe and the US. Now, what we want to do is quite simple. We want to replicate what the Chinese have done by having a vertically integrated operation here in Australia with our Severe Graphite project. So we want to have a mining operation, produce graphite concentrates, then produce purified spherical graphite and sell it as an alternative production source to other sources around the world. So what does that look like here in South Australia? Well, our mine site would be located on the Eyre Peninsula. We're just outside of Arno Bay, just a few kilometers from the Port Lincoln Highway, about halfway between Whyalla and Port Lincoln. So our plan would be to have a mining concentrator at the mine site. We would then transport that material to Port Adelaide, the main port of South Australia, and then distribute that to customers around the world. Now, we think this is a good market for us, largely because we're leveraging off of our main advantage, which is our resource. Our resource is relatively unique. It's one of a handful of deposits around the world that look like it can produce a high quality graphite concentrate at a low cost. Sevier is one of the largest graphite deposits in terms of resources, in terms of reserves, but maybe more importantly, we have a relatively unique flat-lying orientation. And we tried to illustrate this with the cross-section here on the chart shown on the left. That area in red is Sevier, and we've tried to show the shapes of other graphite deposits that we've superimposed on top of it in the two shades of blue and green. And what you can see is Sevier, again shown in red. It's near surface, it's thick, relatively high grade compared to other deposits that tend to be vertical or subvertical. What this means for us is we have a real advantage in terms of mining cost. And after completing our DFS, that mining cost advantage we can pass along to the total operating cost for producing graphite concentrates. So now it looks like we can produce a graphite concentrate that is competitive with any operation in the world, not just in Australia, but in the world. So if you look closely at the chart we have here, we're at the far left of the cost curve. So one of the lowest operating costs for producing graphite concentrates. We're competitive with the Chinese. We're competitive with what would be coming out of East Africa. Now, if we move one step further downstream, here we think we have a real advantage. Because to produce a downstream product, you want to be in a low sovereign risk jurisdiction, an industrialized place. You don't want to trap a high value product like purified spherical graphite in a high risk jurisdiction. You want to do it in a place like Australia. We think we can do it, and we think we can pass along that cost advantage from concentrates into the production of purified spherical graphite. And we can do that because the chief cost in producing graphite, purified spherical graphite, the single largest cost is the graphite concentrates itself. So what we've shown here in the chart is our projected cost. At our study, we think we can produce purified spherical graphite for about $2,000 a ton. That makes us competitive with the Chinese. And importantly, against the rest of the world, we have a real advantage through a vertically integrated operation because we'd be obtaining graphite concentrate from our own operation. So we've tried to split that up on the chart here to quantify what that savings is. So the area in blue is the cost that's related to the graphite concentrate. In our case, we're getting that graphite concentrate from Sivir at a relatively low cost. If you're getting that material at market on a unit cost basis per ton, based on current prices, you'd be paying almost $400 more a ton to produce purified spherical graphite. Over the life of the mine, it's a savings of over $1,000 a ton. So it's a major savings. And if you translate that into the life of the mine, the potential returns are quite large. We're looking at a net present value of over $700 million for this project. Now, the details in some of our releases, but I think the key walk away here is we have a really unique opportunity to leverage off of the high demand space, purified spherical graphite, and take what we're good at, which is having a great resource and upgrading that to the high quality purified spherical graphite really that our customer wants. What's next for Renascor? We expect to be relatively busy as we push forward through the second half of 2020, preparing customer samples. We're doing a significant amount of optimization and advanced mineral process tests. We recently released some purification results. We're doing advanced battery tests. We're moving through our permitting phase, but really the key for us now is offtake. We have what we think the customer wants. It's what the customer told us they want. And if we're successful at doing this, we think we have a real opportunity to turn what looks like a pretty exciting development into a major operation that could be feeding the lithium-ion battery sector for years to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for a wonderfully informative presentation, David. Please refer your questions for David to the contact links under the Renascor Resources company description at noosaminingconference.com.au. Up next, we have our final presentation for the day from Venture Minerals. Make sure you tune into that. You won't want to miss it. We'll see you back here soon after a short break.